The Stranger Things fandom is going insane right now, and I don't even feel all that bad because the last episode had so many problems, and this last season had so many inconsistencies that people are just desperate to know that, oh, it wasn't all for nothing, and this journey isn't over in such a lame way. But it looks like Conformity Gate is not real, and people are already melting down about it on social media. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, I think most people could figure out that this wasn't actually going to happen. Why would they put the fake finale in theaters? Why would they do all of these interviews if it wasn't over? And ultimately, why would they now be talking about, the next step for themselves? It just seems like it is over. And I think everybody figured that out. But there are some fans out there who are coping because they are so upset with the ending. And if I were the Duffer brothers, I would never show my face ever again in public because your ending is so bad. People have gone so insane. They have convinced themselves that there's no way that the finale was truly the finale, which is funny. And the Stranger Things fans are going crazy. And now that the day has rolled around where Conformity Gate's real final episode was supposed to release, the scores on Rotten Tomatoes have started going down. The past week or so, it's been steady. It had gotten to a 56% and basically had stayed there. I think a lot of people bought into this theory, and now it's actually going down because it is at a 54% right now, which it still could be worse. Look at something like Game of Thrones, which is a 30, but 54% still is a nightmare when you look at the other seasons and how well those did. And yikes, is this just terrible for Netflix? Stranger Things fans at 12:01 a.m. on January 8th, when they finally realized that episode 8 was indeed the actual finale, Conformity Gate isn't real, and the finale really was just that bad. Millions and millions of views and interactions on posts like this. The entire Stranger Things fandom currently in a collective psychosis, coming up with a theory called Conformity Gate as a coping mechanism because the Duffer's writing was genuinely that bad. You had a cultural phenomenon here. There were millions, hundreds of millions of people really, who have heard of Stranger Things, watched Stranger Things, talked about Stranger Things, and season 5 had so many plot holes that people are convinced this cannot be the end. Conformity Gate, I was rewatching V1 and noticed that Derek is playing Ghosts and Goblins, a game famous for its fake ending, where you have to replay the whole thing on harder difficulty to get the true finale, and Derek doesn't get to finish it because Tina won't let him. We are already seeing the coping in real time and the seething happening in real time with these scores going down. But when you really pay attention to these interviews the Duffer brothers have been doing, the way that they've responded to the backlash, yeah, I mean, they don't seem to care. These guys are not geniuses and masterminds. They don't even know their own show. Like, when you actually see what they're talking about and the way that they're talking about in these interviews and the answers they're giving, it just proves how little they actually cared. This was their answer to what happened to the military after the finale, saying, in that 18-month gap, I suppose there's not much else to do. You can't explore this other dimension. There's no 11 to chase anymore because she's gone. So my guess is they just sort of slowly dismantled operations and left town. Brother, this is your show. What do you mean you guess? What do you mean you suppose? You didn't actually come up with a theory while you were writing the series? Like, you didn't think people would ask this, and you didn't think that you should have some concrete or solid answer? What a nightmare of a response, at least in my opinion. a lot of people were wondering why there were no Demobats and Demodogs and Demogorgons in the finale, and they said mainly it's just that Vecna was not expecting the sneak attack on his home turf. It reminds me so much of what David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, Dumb and Dumber, did with Game of Thrones, saying, well, Daenerys kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet and kind of forgot about this and that. It's just so embarrassing to see them respond in such an out of touch way. And, well, they're getting destroyed for this finale. The score again is sitting at a 54% on Rotten Tomatoes. And when you look at the audiences and what they're saying, all of these poor reviews are flooding the charts now. There were a lot of people that initially were trying to sort of fight back against the negatives with positives and trying to reverse review bomb it and raise the score. But now that this episode hasn't come out, and now that the Duffers aren't going into more interviews, and now that people realize this is actually the ending, they're saying hoping for a banger big disappointment. What a load of bullshit. Fans waited far too long for an ending that ultimately felt predictable and uninspired. The Duffer brothers left too many unresolved plot threads, and the season played out like one extended action sequence that led to an overly convenient defeat of Vecna and the Mind Flayer. Most disappointing of all, the show continued to avoid taking meaningful risks with its main characters, draining the finale of any emotional or meaningful impact. It sucked so bad, so many plot holes, bad writing, character arcs unfinished, and so on. Left so many plot holes, missing context, and so many loose ends. I was so excited for the new season and was left royally disappointed. The first volume was worth watching and left potential. Volume 2 and the finale were not as hyped up to be, and the Duffer brothers have messed this up big time. And yes, I am a Stranger Things fan, but this will not be a season I decide to rewatch. So yeah, things are looking pretty rough for the Duffer brothers right now, for Netflix right now, and it doesn't seem that they really cared at the end of the day, that they just sort of wanted the show to be done. They didn't put their best foot forward, and they weren't listening to fans. And really, they didn't have a lot of trust or faith in their fan base, because people are coming up with all of these crazy theories and ideas, and they gave us the most boring ending possible. They could have viewed their audience as being matured now, as these characters are growing up. A lot of other people are growing up. This is a Harry Potter level show for a lot of people and a lot of younger folk. And so you should have trusted their sort of maturity at this point and actually killed off characters. By the end, it should have felt like, wow, we lost some friends, we gained some friends, and we are completely different. But really, none of these characters went through any emotional arc. So I'll be keeping my eye on social media, though. Right now, the Stranger Things fan base is absolutely freaking out because Conformity Gate is not real. The Duffer brothers and Netflix must be panicking, and their scores are tanking. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this important and informative, make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.